It's Jefferson, climbs the ladder. Oh my goodness! Come
on! What is going on, everyone? AP over here at Rumpier Sports, bringing to you once again. We got the Lineup Builder Show going over today's millionaire prize pool, Showdown DraftKings slate. We're talking game 3. Fellas, I've had a ton of time breaking this down with you, doing the screen share with SaberSim. Man, I was high on Gabe Vincent for game 2. I didn't have the complete – I mean, it was a massive chop too. Obviously, we want – most of these are going to be chopped. And if you solo ship, I mean, hats off to you. That is the ultimate goal. But most of the time you're going to chop, and we want to chop 7 ways. We want to chop, 5 ways, 10 ways, not these 120 way chops. But still, a chop is a chop, a ship is a ship. Before I kick it off to the fellas, hit the like button, hit the subscribe. Helps us out a lot. We appreciate it when you do. We got to shout out first, David Russell. What a incredible prediction for game 2. 111 to 110. Miami is what he had. The final score was 111-108. Awesome job. Hit us up on Twitter. Send me a DM the main Twitter account. We're going to hook you up. I got to also shout out Rome Banks. Another impressive guess. 112 to 111. Miami Heat winning. We're going to give out two swag packages. Rome Bakes, David Russell, congrats to you both. Hit us up on Twitter, and we will get you your swag. Rubio, let's bring you in first, my man. How's it going? What is your kind of reactions from game 2? Obviously, a lot of us were on the Nuggets, and Butler showed up, and Gabe Vincent had a game. Max Strus had a game. It was a team effort, and it was really impressive defensively. What were your takes away from game 2?
Man, when the Nuggets got out with the lead with the bench unit, I thought it was cooked for Miami. I mean, that Denver bench has not been great all season, and they went out, kicked some ass with plus 15, plus 20 even in that first half, and you thought, Jokic is coming back, they're just going to extend this lead. And what do you know? I mean, Miami's doing what they do every single time. They stay in it. They're gritty. And there they were at the end, thanks to some really questionable calls going against the Nuggets. But we won't go there, It was a great game. Strus absolutely catching fire in that first quarter. Was a very, very tilting. It was tilting on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I had a bunch. But, game 2, I mean, what do we say about Kevin Love? It was a series for him to start. And, sure enough, game 2, shot 2 of 9, but he was still a big benefit to that team, had 10 rebounds. And, it made me so mad when Spo said, I meant to play him in game 1. I just got in my own way. And I was like, Spo, you have no idea what you did.
It was a troll.
By not playing him. But it's a great reaction slate, right? MPJ played absolutely awful last game, too. And he was heavy chalk. And it's going to be one of those things. I mean, this could be a series where it's Bruce Brown who steps up off the bench for Denver. He played really well last game, and his price got chopped down a little bit on DraftKings and stuff. So I'm really curious to see what builds are going to, pop up for us here in the Saber Show. Like, I got my own share of builds already, but the MPJ is probably the biggest conundrum on the slate for me right now.
Yeah, I agree. Excellent takeaways right there. Before I kick it over to Glock, we're going to run it back too. So your game 3 predictions, score predictions, who wins, what scores they put up, post them in the YouTube comments, not the chat section. Not the chat and Discord either. YouTube comments, put them in there. We're going to give out some more winners for after game 3. Glock, same question over to you. It was a good friend of ours, 40th birthday party. So they rented out a room and private room. I was promised a TV in this private room. To accommodate me, how selfish of me wanting to watch game 2, but we didn't have that, so we all had our phones out and we were watching the game. But I was really surprised, kind of by the deep. I guess we shouldn't be surprised, but I was with Rubio. I kind of agree with that. I thought when that bench unit came out and got it done, I thought there's no way Miami does it. There's no way they get it done, and they did. So we had a series now. Maybe I might be wrong. I thought I had Nuggets in 5. I don't feel as confident in that anymore. I think we go to 6, maybe 7. Who knows? Glock, what was your takeaway from game 2?
Yeah, I think I'm with you guys. Like, it just feels like every time Miami just keeps proving me wrong. Obviously, one of my bad takes last game was that I was predicting Denver Nuggets blowout. Obviously, that didn't happen. It looked like it was on its way to happening, like what Rubio said, where, when that bench unit was coming in, Jeff Green was looking great. Christian Braun was doing great. And then all of a sudden it flipped. Like, I think one of the biggest mistakes Malone did in that game too was kind of overcommitting to those guys, especially in the second half. I'm all for your role players like providing that spark off the bench initially, which is what they did. But you saw in that second half, Christian Braun was getting like blown by Duncan Robinson. There was like a 10-point stretch from D-Rob where, I think he hit like two straight threes, and then he took it straight to the basket for an easy layup. And then that was like the huge momentum shift of the game. And for some reason, like Malone stuck with Christian Braun and Jeff Green for like way too long, I feel like. And then, MPJ gets blown by once. You guys mentioned him, and then he gets benched immediately. I'm a personal believer where MPJ, I think, is a key to this series. I think he has to play well. Obviously, we'll get into Jamal. He obviously has to play well. Jokic is going to do his thing. But MPJ is that zone buster, in my opinion, because he's just so good at shooting the three. And obviously, Bruce Brown is great. He's cutting and slashing into the zone and whatnot. But you need to have people that can break that zone and shoot that outside three. So I don't know. Like, it gets me a little nervous since Malone is just so shaky with how quickly he benches MPJ. I think I'm just going to go right back to him on this slate. But yeah, like game 2, I think we hit a lot of things on the head, right? Like Bam Adebayo obviously shown that he's going to have a massive role in this series. He's kind of the engine while Jimmy's like somewhat the facilitator. But like, man, it felt like every single play, Bam just gets the ball at the high post, top of the key, and then he's running pick and rolls or he's going to facilitate from that position. So I think we hit that spot right. And then, yeah, I think we touched on it as well, that mid-range captain build. We covered it on the stream, but we said it, right? Like, as you get into these series, it becomes harder and harder to get unique, especially when there's a build like that where there's a mid-range captain that you can play with all plays that play 25 plus minutes, right? And, I ran my vanilla opto like before I got on. You're going to see a lot of it today too, where those builds look really, really nice. Cheapish captain, starting from K-Love all the way going up to like Max Strus, Gabe Vincent again. Those builds look really nice. And like you said, AP, obviously we want to reduce the amount of chops and try to get unique. But as it gets further and further into the series, it does become difficult because the rotations condense. Like, we could maybe not see Christian Braun after game 2's performance. We could maybe not see him tonight. We could maybe not see Cody Zeller tonight. So that's 2 less players in your player pool that are going to garner minutes or will not garner minutes. So, it becomes more difficult, but obviously this show, we're going to try to find ways to get different and help you guys, reduce the amount of chopping for sure.
Yeah, really good comments there. I mean, yeah, when you think about it, I like it. Like, I agree with you. I think Michael Porter Jr. he's got to step up. And we always talk about it, these role players on the road. Can they get it done? We're so far into the playoffs. And, I mean, MPJ's looked like a hero at times, and then he's looked not good at times too. Like, obviously we saw that last game. So you're going to be looking at him. And if he isn't, yeah, I mean, Malone could be really quick to go to Bruce Brown. I've always respected Bruce Brown, mainly as a defender. Can run an offense at times too, but they don't need him to do that. They need him to defend. And when you look at the makeup of this Miami team, I don't mind that. I just would, when you kind of look at what was done and you rewatch that game, there's many things on the Nuggets side. Murray could have been more aggressive, more facilitating through Jokic. I think the Nuggets rebound, and this could be a zigzag type of series. So that's kind of what I have in the back of my mind. How we've done this. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I didn't touch on, the huge change was obviously Kevin Love getting into the starting lineup, and that allowed Jimmy Butler to guard Jamal Murray, and that also in turn allowed Gabe Vincent to chase around KCP, reducing KCP's effectiveness for wide open shots. So having the ability to have Jimmy on Jamal Murray is what really kind of made the Nuggets struggle, I think. And obviously they're going to go right back to it today. That's going to have to deal with, how we handle Jamal Murray and whatnot. But I just kind of wanted to throw that in there because that starting lineup adjustment, helped the Heat a lot defensively. Although it didn't look like that in the first quarter, throughout the course of the game, it definitely took a toll.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Glock, let me just throw it right back to you. Is there any world where, obviously they want to get MPJ looks early and often, but what about Aaron Gordon? We know he's out there primarily for defense, but is that a guy that they could instead try to tee up, hit open shot like early and just see, okay, whoever's hot, we're going to go to them, force Miami to make another adjustment? Is there anything there that you see between AG? Because we've been under on AG, but
yeah,
I'm going to go through the pricing changes over the past 2 games here, next, and his has come down quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the pricing is definitely enticing, but I feel like, man, Aaron Gordon has had this opportunity all playoff series, it feels like, where they're just leaving him wide open in the corner. And like we mentioned, Kevin Love is the one that's guarding him, and he's not going to be pinned to his hip, right? Like he's going to be kind of sagging off in the paint, trying to help, on the Jokic post-ups and whatnot and the drives. So I think Aaron Gordon is going to have the opportunities, but will he knock down the threes? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like one of these, Aaron Gordon and MPJ, I think one of them has the opportunity to get, to ride pine down the stretch. And I think it's going to be who's playing better, who's hitting the open three. And like you said, Bruce Brown, he's going to be a huge X factor today, I think, because he's one of the guys that can cut and slash into that zone, make plays other than Murray and Jokic. So, like, I still prefer MPJ. Obviously, you have the salary. Aaron Gordon, I'm personally going to stay under on him. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. I'm just not a big Aaron Gordon guy. And, obviously, if he comes out and shoots like Max Struss from 3, I'm going to lose tonight, most likely. But I'll take my chances because I think Miami is okay with letting Aaron Gordon beat them personally.
Yeah, and you'll see here. So Aaron Gordon, he hasn't come close to sniffing 30 DraftKings points in this series while he's been playing heavy minutes too. But I have my bias projections loaded. If you've watched the last 2 shows, you understand what I'm talking about. But even just looking at it, I'm again, like, I find myself well under kind of what the standard projections are out there on him. So that's going to be something that obviously we're looking at. But again, before we get into this and our base build and running that and telling you all what that means, I do want to just touch on the pricing adjustments. Again, DraftKings has lowered primarily the Heat side. If we just look at Jimmy Butler. So Jimmy Butler was 13.4K in game 1. He's all the way down to 12K. Bam's down 600 in relation to his game 1 price. Gabe Vincent's down 200 in relation to his game 1 price. Lowry's down. Caleb Martin's finally coming down. But again, Caleb Martin is still priced over like Gabe Vincent, who has a much bigger role in this series. And this is where we can start to adjust. Max Strus is down 600 in relation to his or actually, I think it's, he's down 600 in relation to his game 1. And Duncan Robinson's down quite a bit. Kevin Love is down quite a bit. So we're getting kind of some interesting dynamics here on the Heat side. Rubio, I'm going to kick it to you. The question that I have is, at what point can we play Jimmy Butler a heavy rate at the utility spot? And at 12K, is he now an option at the captain spot, in your opinion?
Yes, I mean, going through the slate here when I was doing mine too, is that Butler, when you give him a projection of 50, he's going to hit plenty of teams. And my best team last game was a Jokic captain with Jimmy in the flex or in the utility. And the biggest thing that you can kind of notice is that everyone's price got softer. All right, and this kind of takes away those 1K guys a little bit where you don't really need to play them in your team. And I'm able to get a lot of Jokic captain, and Jimmy kind of naturally comes in a little bit. Not as heavy as Jokic, because usually, Jokic's projection is so high, but Jimmy's hitting a lot more teams than I anticipated. And part of the reason is, you got guys like Kyle Lowry, sub 5K, Bruce Brown, 5K, and you got Jeff Green, who's 1,800, Love, 2,400 stuff. You have so many, cheap guys who you can mold your team around with just 2 stars, basically. And I think that's going to be, quite the popular build. I think a lot of people are just going to go 2 studs and then build around the value pieces that we have. All the soft pricing makes your build it's kind of hard to be unhappy with any build that you make tonight. And Jimmy Butler, I think, might be out of the comfort zone for many. So maybe you can do that and kind of get different from the field. I mean, it wouldn't surprise us if Jimmy got 55, right? Like if Jimmy ended up with 55 fantasy points. And, I always bring it back to that Lakers Nuggets series. Jokic went off for almost 90 fantasy points in game one. Anthony Davis is the optimal captain in that game. So you don't necessarily need to have, the top scoring guy in the captain if you're paying up for a stud. Like if Jimmy can stay within reaching distance of Jokic, he has a chance to be the optimal captain. That's not going to be popular tonight. I mean, we saw his ownership. What was it? 27% last game in the utility and captain combined. It probably goes up a little bit slightly here, but you can really get unique by just playing him in the cap. So it's something that I'm fiddling with quite a bit, AP, especially when I throw him up there at 50. I mean, Jokic had a 41, 11, and 4 and only got, 60 DK basically? Like, Jimmy can stay within reaching distance of that. So I don't hate that idea at all. Jimmy's going to be a guy where it's a little bit tough because we all know the matchup with Aaron Gordon is incredibly tough. We know we don't want to discount that. But I like the correlation against Bam. And Bam's going to be chalk again. And I like getting different that way. Even though we might agree that it is a Bam series. Bam can be aggressive, but we know Bam can absolutely floor out and Jimmy can have a ceiling game. And when I looked at it last time, their games are always zigging and zagging, right? If Jimmy has a good game, Bam doesn't have a good game, and vice versa. So I really like the way that kind of sets up. You get leverage against Bam. And yeah, it's a nice idea, AP. It's definitely something I'll have tonight.
Yeah, I like it. Glock, let me go kick it over to you and talking in regards to kind of the pricing adjustments that we've seen over the last few games now. On the Nuggets side, Jokic continues to go up. He's up to 15.2K. That's a big increase since his 14K price at the utility spot in game one. Jamal Murray is also up there as well. Bruce Brown, though, I'm glad we started off kind of talking about him when we talked about our game two reactions, potentially adjustments into game three. Bruce Brown is down substantially. He's 5K now. So on the Nuggets side and also with the adjustments that you're seeing on the Heat side, from a macro perspective, what are you seeing here with the pricing adjustments that we have?
Yeah, like I said, I ran just kind of vanilla opto before we got on, and we're kind of seeing the same pattern where, like you mentioned it, Miami keeps getting bumps down, right? Like max stress is 4.4K, insanely low for the amount of minutes and shots that he's going to get. So if you just run a vanilla opto, you're seeing a lot of 4 Miamis with 2 Nuggets, and that's just purely due to price. Obviously, Jokic is going to have a monster projection, so he's going to be in your lineup most likely as one of your Denver dudes. And then, like you said, the big decision point, Aaron Gordon got cheaper, 6.2K. He's popping a lot with Jokic. Bruce Brown, 5K. He's popping a lot with Jokic. So trying to decide and which Denver pieces you like and want to get overweight on is going to be a huge key because, like we mentioned on the last show, these guys that are super, super cheap, Kyle Lowry, 4.8K, Max Stress, 4.4K. Bam Adebayo is arguably cheap still at 9K for just his role in the series. Kevin Love, obviously. These guys are going to flood your optimizers, and then making the decision points on what to do with these Denver pieces is going to be key because right now, like Rubio mentioned, Bam Adebayo is popping the most at the captain spot for me. These first few teams, it's Bam captain and then Kevin Love captains, and you have to scroll down pretty far to get a Jokic captain just based on my numbers. And that's clearly just, that shows you the math is mathing and the fact that, all these Miami pieces with the potential that a Cody Zeller could get cut out of the rotation, Christian Brown, these Miami pieces are just all good plays just because the sheer minutes that they're going to play. And so, yeah, right now I'm just seeing a lot of Miami flooded in the opto. I'm curious to see when you run your stuff, what you see as well. But it's a pricing and rolls thing for me, and basically deciding what you want to do with a guy like Bruce Brown tonight, with a guy like Aaron Gordon is going to be key. And then on the opposite side, a guy that I really like coming home, Max Struss, I don't see him popping as much as I'd expect due to his price. I mean, you look at, he's obviously a boomer bust guy, right? We saw that clearly in game 1 and game 2. Game 1, 0 for 9 from 3, 0 for 10 from the field. Did not hit a single shot. Second game, comes out guns blazing, puts up 29.5 fantasy points. And in the first quarter, you could basically assume he was optimal. Just because, and they were leaving him wide open. These shots aren't contested. He's not coming off a screen and hand in his face. They're leaving him wide open. So I like Max Struss a lot coming home. And he's a guy I'm going to fiddle with at the captain spot because he makes a lot of work, and I'm not seeing too much ownership with him there, despite the cheap tag. And, like we mentioned, when you fiddle with these mid-tier captain builds, it's a lot harder to get unique. And if I see low percentages on a guy like Max Strus at captain, I'm going to like him, especially a role player coming home to, an environment that he's familiar with and coming off a decent shooting game.
Yeah, I mean, that was crazy. And tilting if you didn't have any Max Strus at all.
At 0.
In game 2. Yeah, I mean, you're just like, you shut it down and just like watching the game for fun. I had a little bit, but no, I wasn't overweight or anything like that. I think I had one random like Max Strus captain too, which obviously wasn't optimal too. So let me go over what we're looking at right here once more. So again, I'm using my AP bias projections, what I call them. Right here, though, you can see RPS, you can see SaberSim projections, you can see my projections, you can see the differences between them, a couple other features as well. I believe you can average all of them if you want. Something that going into next season also that we're most likely going to have a couple different sets of projections and different things that we're working on. Tougher in the NBA streets, but we can give you a nice edge in doing so. So my bias projections, it's look, I'm really trying to nail in a game script here. And one thing I've been very transparent about all playoff series long is how over I've been on Jokic. I am like, when I compare it to other projections out there, I'm typically just higher on him. And that's just because he's been so secure in or so consistent in his production. And I want to highlight that through my projection. I haven't actually looked. So I ran my base build. I haven't looked at it yet. So it's going to be interesting taking a look. What is a base build? I call it my research build. I've used these settings. I run 150 lineups with a pool size of 1,500. I don't change anything here. I bring correlation all the way down to 0. I run it at a 1 in sim diversity setting. It's essentially like doing a faster version of a cash build. So this, when they run it, it'll go much quicker. So why am I doing a pool size of 1,500? This is something that we've talked about quite often. I not only want to see what my highest captain percentage is, I also want to see what the pool percentage looks like as well. So I'm just going to bring this over just to make it a little bit easier. So I can see here in my pool using these base projections, I'm getting roughly 32% Jokic captain, 41% in my 150. I've also sorted it here by projected score. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my bias projections. I am running it at a cat. So I want all of my highest projected lineups up at the top, and I'm sorting it by highest projected score. I use this as a base research because I want to get an idea of what the builds are going to look like. And does it fit with kind of the narrative that I'm seeing? Is there anything I just want to eliminate right away? So very similar to what we've talked about thus far. Rubio, let me kick it back over to you to start us off in this build. And again,
that's a good first team right there.
Yeah, it's a really nice first team.
Very nice. Hashtag very nice.
Rubio, what are you seeing here in the captain spot? Obviously, I've inflated Jokic's projection quite a bit. And relative to what's already out there, I'm sure I'm overweight already on Jokic. But what are you seeing with these captain options?
Yeah, I mean, we noticed one thing for sure. Kevin Love is going to pop in the captain right there. And, well, even when I have Kevin Love at, 15 or something like that, too, I get a similar percentage. So I would be careful with the Kevin Love captains for one reason. It kind of funnels down to a certain build, a certain handful of builds. So you're not going to be too unique. Like, I don't mind it for a single entry perspective, but when you're doing like these these large lineups and stuff, right? Like Kevin Love's probably going to need to get about 20, and I'm willing to fade if he's going to be chalking the captain, outside my single entry contest and stuff. But we also look at it, you see a lot of 4-2 Miami, like Locke was saying, even 3-3 Denver. And it kind of goes to, what you have, Strus at. If you have Strus high, you're probably going to get a ton of 4-2 heat. And that's one thing where, I like the call because Strus was wide open on so many of those streets. And then one thing that I feel like Malone has to adjust is, like, how are we not getting a hand in his face? How are these miscommunications happening? How are all these shots wide open from the corner? So you can kind of play like that double-edged sword where I think they overcommit on Strus today or something. But, like, Strus is a guy where even when I get him at projection to 18 or something, he's still hitting plenty of builds and stuff. So I'm surprised to see him at 10%, but it makes a lot of sense. I mean, he caught fire last game. I will say I'm a little bit hesitant because after that first quarter, I think he got 90K or something like that. But you know how that is. I mean, that's a shoot or shoot. You know, it's a make or miss league, and he made his shots for the first quarter there. Obviously, Gabe Vincent, you know, we haven't really talked about him just yet. And Gabe Vincent's probably going to be chalk again. But he was the optimal captain last time, I believe. So, yeah, it's tough, you know, recency bias and everything too. And also the fact that Gabe Vincent's also just a really good player and a good spot going against Jamal Murray. So, yeah, I mean, these captains aren't really too surprising. I think I would have expected maybe Jamal Murray to pop up a little bit more than he did. But I actually didn't get to see a chance where he's had Jamal at. But you know, that Jamal, Jimmy, what we just had that conversation about, where you're probably either spending all the way up for Jokic or you're probably going the mid-tier route. And it could make Jamal and Jimmy captain builds a little bit different today.
Yeah, very. Yeah. So Glock, let me kick it over to you. Your thoughts on what you're seeing at the captain spot here. And then also, you know, my question to you, you brought up the fact that by starting Kevin Love, they were able to then move Jimmy Butler to contain Jamal Murray. You know, with that adjustment right there, what could we potentially see? And then the other thing that you both mentioned is it was Max Strus who had a wide open shot. So Malone's not going to let that happen this game. So who's that guy? Like Spoelstra probably already is thinking about, all right, they're going to start checking Max Strus. So where's that adjustment? Like, what are we doing in trying to like predict that? Is it Bruce Brown? Like we talked about Bruce Brown earlier. And you know, if MPJ is having that slow start, that's one captain that we're not seeing right here at all. And actually let me real quick pull up. Let me just see what he's.
Yeah. What do you have Bruce at? I'm curious.
Yeah, so he's not hitting any of my pool in 1,500 either. And my projection on him is, let's see. Let me just go back. We'll pull this back up. But I want to say my projection on him was.
Oh, that's pretty. That's captain. Okay.
Captain, yeah, it was pretty much in line with where others. So I'm above Saber, and I'm right in line with RPS. So this would be one of those custom when we build out our game scripts that we would make an adjustment on. But he's not hitting anything in the captain optimal spot right now.
Yeah, I think like if you expect Bruce Brown to have a bigger role, like I do think you need to up his projection to at least like 24, 25. If you look in the past series, obviously he's only put up 20.75 fantasy points, you know, around there in the first two games of Miami. And then he kind of got phased out in the last game versus the Lakers. But, you know, there's multiple games. Like one game he went off for 31 fantasy points, went off for 27, 24, 24, 35. So he has upside. And in these builds, I would bump up Bruce maybe to like 25, see how he hits, obviously. And then obviously if you think, you know, MPJ gets the hit there and rides Pine, you're going to want to bump down his projection as well and see how those builds kind of look. But yeah, definitely Bruce Brown, I think, is the one adjustment I think that seems obvious from a, you know, Denver perspective, because he also plays good defense, right? And partly why MPJ got benched, you know, Christian Brown towards the end of the game was they just kept getting blown by on defense, blown coverages. So Bruce Brown is that dependable defensive anchor guy that, you know, Malone definitely trusts. So I like him in the captain as well. I would just say in those builds, I would consciously bump down either one of Aaron Gordon or MPJ, because I think one of those guys obviously is not going to close the game if Bruce Brown is in. So yeah, I like the idea for sure. And yeah, I would just keep that in mind because, you know, a build with like MPJ, Aaron Gordon, and Bruce Brown and Jokic, I would kind of reconsider. I wouldn't say I would hard group that out because, you know, we've seen in Showdown, you know, sometimes not grouping it out is the way to get unique, right? Because sometimes people are just so sharp nowadays in the industry where it's like, okay, obviously you want to max one of Kyle Lowry and one of Gabe Vincent. But in reverse, like if Kyle Lowry just goes off in his run, Gabe Vincent does what he does, and he's just super solid, like they're going to be optimal just because of pricing and, you know, the fantasy points that they produce. So sometimes it's counterintuitive, but grouping things out makes you less unique because that's just what the field is doing. So that's kind of in my head. That's the things I would consider. Obviously, if you like Bruce Brown, just consider the guy that is taking a hit on the Denver side. But yeah, I like Bruce Brown a lot, especially in this game, because I think one of the main Denver adjustments is like they just have to play harder. They have to play better defense. And I think, after getting benched in that game too, just so blatantly from MPJ's side, he's going to give it his all on the defensive side here. And we've seen like multiple stock games from MPJ. Like that's when he's hit the ceilings in the playoffs where, you see people driving on him and he gets that block, he swats him from behind, gets multiple of those. So I don't know. It's a tough thing because I like Bruce Brown, but I also like MPJ in a bounce back spot here. It's just kind of how your lineup looks, where I'm sure if we scroll down, we'll see some kind of weird teams where you may have Aaron Gordon, MPJ, and Bruce Brown. But yeah, that's kind of how I would think about it.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, Glock, too, just about like grouping and stuff. Like you don't have to group out Jokic or in that group. But you could do a max of 2 between KCP, Bruce Brown, Aaron Gordon, and MPJ. You got 4 guys who kind of take away from each other. And Bruce Brown can take the minutes of Aaron Gordon, KCP, or Michael Porter Jr., and vice versa among theirs. I mean, kind of wanted to bring that up because when I'm doing my group, I'm probably doing a max of 2 between those 4 guys of Gordon, MPJ, Brown, and KCP, just because I don't want to, if I'm only running 50 teams, right? Like I want to be able to kind of at least have a lot of correlation across the board. Or if someone's losing minutes to someone, I have that covered. And that's probably a group I just wanted to make. And since you shouted that out, I thought I'd chime in.
Yeah, very good. I mean, right out of the gate. So like, here's a 5-1. There were some interesting 5-1s that we talked about during game 2, but this one is interesting as well. I just worry. I'm with you, Rubio. I'm not going to fade Kevin Love at captain, but I do worry about him a little bit. His role, though, when he's in there, obviously he's not going to play heavy minutes, but he's productive. They need him for rebounds. The shot attempts are going to be there, and they go home. Kevin Love, though, come on. I mean, I'm not worried about like on the road or at home. He's a veteran, man. He's not going to be as impacted by that. But if he's getting 22 minutes at his price, he makes for just such a fantastic play. My question, though, Rubio, back to you. Jokic, I've just made sure I'm always 100% on so far. Like either captain plus utility. I want to make sure Jokic is 100%. Is there anyone else that you would just completely lock? Is Kevin Love a guy that you lock? Or when you look at this utility spot, are you setting hard caps on your ceiling percentages on any of these players?
I think Kevin Love would be the next closest because even when I run my teams, like I said, I only have him projected for 15. And, that's kind of being a little bit more conservative, I would say, because, 22 minutes. He took 9 shots last game. He went 2 for 9 shooting and put up a decent score. And what if he hits his shots today? But Kevin Love's the one because I don't trust Jeff Green. I don't trust Christian Brown. I don't trust Cody Zeller or anyone like that. I can trust Kevin Love because Kevin Love is always productive. He's going to start 2 sides of the half, even if he doesn't get that third stint like he did last game where he came in the second quarter. Like you're still going to get a comfortable score out of him. So I think Jokic and Love are the 2 guys that I'll probably have the most of tonight. Probably maybe 100% across the board, across captain and utility. And then when we're talking about like these mid-tier guys, which one would cap the most? Like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, which one would I have like very few of if I could control it?
Yeah, so kind of what I did there. I like doing this. Actually, it's a move that I do more often in PGA. So, we should do one of these shows sometime for PGA. Maybe next year we'll bring, or maybe next week we'll bring the crew for the U.S. Open. But this is a move in step 3 that I like making when I'm fine tuning my PGA builds, where I'm running 1,500. And like this week, I'm playing 75 when I get to this screen. So what I did right there is I just changed all these guys to 45, setting a hard cap on them. And then what I want to see when I make that adjustment, what I like to see is like you see this rank here. Eventually, we're going to get down here and it should start to pull in higher ranked builds, like because it has to go further out in the 1,500 builds that we made to pull those guys in. And it's kind of what I call just kind of diversifying a little bit. So that's someone I would do with Kevin Love just because he can be so streaky. Or who knows with Spoelstra? Maybe Malone has some type of adjustment ready, and maybe Spoelstra's forced to go back to Highsmith. I mean, it seems likely not. I mean, he got no run last game in game 1. But by doing that, by just putting in step 3, kind of a simple adjustment there, that's one way that I make a small tweak, kind of diversifying my portfolio of builds, if you call it that. and spreading it out. And then what I'll do is just I'll come in here and I'll check all the builds to see what they look like. That's kind of what I was talking about, Rubio, with that. Is that something that you do? But really what I wanted to know is, like, do you think there's any other lock type buttons in the utility spot as far as ownership goes, or are you going to kind of mix and match and spread it around?
Yeah, I think so. When I first ran my teams, the one thing I was shocked by was the amount of just players who are viable. I mean, there's hardly any clear-cut fades or clear-cut underweights, because you can make the case for Aaron Gordon. Even though we weren't high on him last game, he got 26.5. He was close to the optimal. He did hit 5 of his 7 shots, but he's 6,200 on DK. That's not that challenging to get to. On FanDuel, he's 11K, different story. I'm completely fine fading him there. But we're looking at DraftKings, you just run your numbers. I got him projected for 24. He's still hitting 26, 28% of my 50 teams that I ran. And you're just looking at it, I mean, it makes sense. All he has to do is outscore a set of players here. And Caleb Martin's not really in the mix as much anymore at 6'6", coming off the bench. So he's very little competition in that region. And he's a guy, even though I don't I'm going to have quite a bit of, just because of the way that it sets up. And, we go through the mid-range and stuff. I'm just worried that, making these teams, I don't have these 1K guys projected for much at all, and they're not hitting any of my teams. And I'm very happy about that. And it kind of goes to the fact that, these 5K guys were 6K last series, and these 6K guys were 5K last series, or 7K last series with Aaron Gordon. So I think I'm going that route too, where I'd probably be more aggressive, fading the cheap guys and, locking Kevin Love and Jokic. Love is the cheap guy that I'm going with, and then fading the rest to kind of get different.
One thing before you touch on that, AP, in a way, Kevin Love kind of ran bad. He didn't even play the fourth quarter of last game. If you remember, Duncan Robinson obviously came in and gave them that huge spark plug. That was all while Kevin Love was sitting the bench. And so he didn't play the fourth quarter at all. Duncan Robinson and Caleb Martin basically played the entire fourth quarter and closed the game for the Heat. So in that aspect, obviously Rubio said he's lower on Kevin Love, but the fact that he's still hitting at a 15 projection should tell you a lot, because I have him at 18 and he's hitting 97% of my builds. And so even when you drop that, you take you think he does worse, 15 points like Rubio says, he's still hitting a ton, I'm sure, in Rubio's builds, and he has the upside for more. Obviously, Kevin Love captain builds are going to be, pretty chalky, because they just, give you the world, right? You could play anything with Kevin Love. But in some of these builds, as AP scrolling down, especially the Kevin Love captain builds, let's say you have MPJ in the util spot. Easy 1v1 you could do is just play Aaron Gordon instead, right? And in that case, all you have to do is hope Aaron Gordon, that second team right there.
You said Kevin Love captain,
Love captain,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And scroll down. Let's find one with just Jokic and MPJ. There we go. Right there. That's a team exactly I was looking at the very bottom right there. Yeah. So Kevin Love captain, Nikola Jokic, Jimmy Butler, MPJ, Gabe Vincent, Max Russ. Really, I think that's a really good build, honestly, if you ask me. It leaves 1,800, but I'm sure it's going to be duped for sure. So one way you get automatically different and reduce your amount of chops is you 1v1 MPJ to Aaron Gordon. You leave even more salary, and it's going to reduce your amount of chops. Or another thing you could do, keep MPJ there, but 1v1 Gabe Vincent to Kyle Lowry. That's going to leave you even more salary left on the table. And no one's everyone's going to be Gabe Vincent's a safer play, obviously, right? And so there's been multiple scenarios in the playoffs where Kyle Lowry closes randomly over Gabe Vincent, So you just kind of script it out in your head, okay, if I win, what am I going to win with this lineup? And then if I do this pivot, how much more can I win? And I feel those simple 1v1 pivots can be the difference from winning $2,000. Obviously, $2,000 is great. A ship is a ship. But going from $2,000 to $10,000 plus in a ship is something that I definitely consider. And for a guy like me, where, I'm playing 20 to 30 lineups when I'm not max entering, doing these 2v2, 1v1 pivots are huge, because it can be a big difference when it comes to how much you're winning.
Really good comment. And you'll notice there. So what I did is I did exactly what Glock said. I changed out MPJ for Gordon, and then I swapped to Kyle Lowry. I didn't get the notification that this build is duped in the 1,500 pool that I ran. So in Saber, if you custom or manually adjust the build, and if it's the same as another build in your entire pool, it'll give you a notice. And so that's interesting. So obviously we don't have this in our pool. It's not a dupe to build. So I kind of like that. That's a sharp little move there from our guy Glock. Let's do this. So we got a little over 20 minutes. We're still doing good. Before we get into building out a script, because that's going to be interesting going to game 3. One more time, we want the prediction for the final score. Post it in the comments, not the YouTube chat. Post it in the comments. Who do you think is going to win? And we're going to do more swag giveaways for the next show that we do, which will be breaking down game 4. Let's start doing this, though. Oh, one other thing I just wanted to highlight. I love these. I love going up here, too, and you can highlight the different stacks just to see what the builds look like. We're getting to a point to where these 5-1s are maybe a little interesting because of the pricing on the Heat side. You have enough guys that, have had lower, pricing decreases there to where you could see like a Jokic. I would always have Jokic, though. If you're going 5-1, Miami, obviously I would have Jokic in that build and we kind of saw that script last time where we had a Jokic takeover game. I still don't know if I'm sold on the 5-1s, though. Only if you are maxing these contests, I think I would go there. Much more in favor of 4-2s and 3-3s in this series and in NBA in general. Let's start building out a script, though. So what's our consensus for game 3? So, how do you build out a script? Well, first, you got to figure out what's your stance. What's your take? Who do you think is going to win? How do you think? What adjustments are going to be made? Rubio, let's start with you. What do you see happening in game 3? Because we'll come to like a group consensus, and then we'll make some adjustments.
I think that we Miami Heat punch first. I think there's going to be a little bit where Denver goes down a little bit, and it leaves the starters in there a little bit longer. The bench comes in, gets a short leash. We see Bruce Brown have a big game, and it ultimately comes down to the wire, and Denver wins with a big Jokic performance. And Jamal Murray and Jokic, the main two guys, they combined for 65 points combined.
Okay, I can get behind that. Glock, what's your prediction for game 3?
Yeah, I like that. I think I'm just going to stick with you guys because I've just predicted blowout in the first 2 games, and I've been completely wrong. Watch this game end up being a blowout on either side. But, yeah, I like that. I think, they mentioned it. I think if any of you guys watch the Draymond Green podcast, Steve Kerr said Jamal Murray is the head of the snake. And we're really going to see how that looks tonight because if Jamal Murray sucks again, I think you could easily see a Miami win. And that's kind of how I would script out some of my lineups. Jokic smash, let him do all the work, kind of similar to game 2. And then on the Miami side, just kind of project how we've been projecting. Project Jimmy in the mid-50s. Bam, I think, is obviously going to be the offensive focal point. Gabe Vincent's going to get his. And then it's going to be kind of like a flip-flop between Max Struss and Duncan Robinson. Obviously, we mentioned Kevin Love. I think he's a great play, obviously, since he's going to keep starting. But yeah, I think definitely close game script where I think Jokic still eats, obviously. Bam, focal point of Miami. Gabe Vincent is still strong. Max Struss has a good shooting performance. And then I really like what Rubio said about like Denver kind of getting off to a slow start. They're going to bench either MPJ or Aaron Gordon. And then Bruce Brown is going to come in and eat. So kind of having like being higher on Bruce Brown, I really like. Obviously higher on Jokic is something that I'll be considering tonight for sure. So I'm kind of on the same page as you guys.
So on the Miami side adjustments, we know Max Struss is just, God, he's such an up and down, like there's such a wide range of outcomes. Actually, this is another feature that I like in SaberSim. You can just see the range of outcomes based off of their sims right now. And if we like pull him up compared to like another player, you can see here he has a lot of very bottom-ish performances there. Obviously, we saw that in game 1, but it's just something that we've seen throughout the season. And a lot of that has to do with Spoelstra's adjustments too. Just like compare, I would assume that, Gabe Vincent so I like how this looks for range of outcomes when you compare the two. So I think Gabe Vincent's role is a little bit stronger here. Obviously, Max Strus going to be a little bit more shooting dependent. So Glock, are you good? Why not? Like we could be under on Strus this game, right? For our script we're building out. Should we go under 20 just because we know he's going to be popular? Are you fine with that?
Yeah, I mean, he's your prototypical GPP play night in, night out. Like you could go way more aggressive on his projection as well, because he's a guy that can get you 30 and then he's a guy that can get you 10. Like there's really no in between for Max Struss, because he's either hitting his threes or he's not. And then if he's not, he's getting benched for Duncan Robinson or maybe even Kevin Love. So whoever's playing better between the three.
So Rubio, going back to you, just thinking back through, listening to both of you talk throughout the show, one thing that you said earlier on is you're way under or have a lower projection on the really cheap, like the 1K guys. I like that, and I especially like it just because when you look at the pricing decreases, mainly on the Heat side, are the lineups that could pan out, it might be less likely that we have an optimal of like a Cody Zeller. And so how low would you go? Like, I don't think we fully fade like them, but can we just go like 1.5? I mean, for some of these guys, and then the same for, Highsmith, or are you keeping some of these guys with a projection here? And then also, what's your thoughts on Caleb Martin? Is Caleb Martin just, this isn't the series for him, or could we get that elite Caleb Martin game at any time?
I think if you're high on Kevin Love, we got to be down on Caleb Martin and vice versa. If you're low on, but the thing is, like right now, his minutes are probably capped at 33, 34. But when he was starting, they were capped at 42, 44 even. Maybe I think he played 45 minutes in a game. So you're losing that minutes hit. And not only was he running pure on, just shot making in general, but I'm not interested at 6.6 coming off the bench with the way they looked with Kevin Love on the court. Even though, if he burns me, he's a guy I'm happy to let burn me, to be honest, especially when he's coming off the bench like that. But going back to the 1K guys, I'm going to read you off Christian Brown's game log here, right? His last 6 games, 6, 3, 1, 1, 2, 17. All this recency bias here. You're going to see Christian Brown hit a ton of teams, I think. you're going to have people, oh, man, I'll project him for 8. What was mean projection? If you just go to his median projection or whatever, it's closer to 2 than it is double digits, or even closer to 7. I mean, it's just his probable range of outcomes is in between 1 and 5 for me. And he's a guy who I'm projecting for 2. Jeff Green, I have a little bit higher at 7.5. Cody Zeller, the reason why I like Cody Zeller tonight, you can leverage Bam as well. Bam Adebayo foul trouble game. Well, who gets those minutes? Cody Zeller probably gets at least a small bump in minutes. It's perfect to pair Jokic with Jimmy in that case too. So Zeller kind of fits more teams just for the game theory rather than the individual performance. But even then, I'll still have him low. But he might be a guy I set a minimum exposure on and then group him away from Bam. Even though I don't like grouping guys away when they're 1K from another player, it's more of a game theory type of move right now. And I don't think Cody Zeller, you guys heard me, I'm not high on these 1K guys at all. And, even if I'm projecting for 4, they're not hitting many teams at all. So I'm going to go more aggressive with Cody Zeller and either max him or just go under and min 5% or something like that too, just to get him in 3 lineups. And then, who's the other 1K guy? Haywood Highsmith didn't play. He played 1 minute in the fourth quarter before getting yanked, I think, in the second half. So I think Haywood Highsmith I'm comfortable kind of leaving out. But then again, we saw it, in
Zigzag.
game 1 where he absolutely went off. And then he also gets blowout burn too. So could burn me. But, yeah, that's basically where I stand.
I like that. So a couple final thoughts here before we run this thing. I mean, we bumped up Jimmy. So the thing that's nice about Bam is, his usage rate, obviously they're using him and, the offense is running through him and Jimmy. He had almost a 30% usage rate in game 1, 23.5 in game 2. Obviously, why was it so high in game 1? Well, we talked about that. Jimmy had one of his lowest usage rates the entire playoffs. It was insane. And we knew that was going to come back up, and it did. And it came from Bam. I still am impressed with what they're doing. I don't think Spoelstra is going to stay that or move away from that. So what I'm getting at is, even though Bam wasn't as aggressive offensively, he still had enough of a floor there through peripheral stats. So I'm fine carrying a nice projection on him. Jimmy, I'm bumping up a little bit. Gabe, I really like this projection on him. I think it's naturally, my bias projections are naturally overly aggressive on him. I see his role being very secure here, whereas Strus, Caleb Martin, Duncan Robinson, these are the guys that are really going to be shot dependent. And I think we all agree Kevin Love, he's going to get it. He's like Kyle Lowry right now. Kyle Lowry's he's never playing over 25 minutes. He hasn't, at least recently. You need him to be highly efficient in those minutes, but we know they're gonna want Kevin Love to get some outside shots, and if he hits just a couple more, I mean, he's definitely likely to be optimal. So I'm fine being somewhat aggressive on him. Let's do this now. So we made these adjustments in addition to my already biased projections. So we have plenty of adjustments made to run this, but let's go a step further and let's really focus in on, this is another thing that I'll do. Like tonight, again, I think I'm going to run 50 builds. And so I want to get my captain pool down a little bit. So I want to eliminate some guys, and I want to, 2 questions for you. And Glock, I'll start with you. Who's your favorite captain? But then who's your favorite captain in the million dollar contest type of form, the large field GPPs? Who is the guy that could be low owned at captain that could get it done for us tonight?
Yeah, I think it's simple, but I think from a game theory perspective, my favorite captains are the top 3, the most expensive 3 guys. And that's just not running any projection changes, running a vanilla opto. You're getting a lot of Bam captain. You're getting a lot of Gabe Vincent captain. You're getting a lot of Kevin Love captain. You're getting all the cheap captain builds where, they're very good builds where it's 100% that they're very strong builds. We've covered it before in the last show where you're going to get a lot of guys that have guaranteed minutes, 6 guys that play solid minutes. So they're very good builds. But I'm saying from, a uniqueness perspective, I do think the way you reduce the chops is to play these top 3 captains. Maybe less so Nikola Jokic. I think he's definitely going to be the most owned captain of the 3. But like Rubio said, Jamal Murray, he had a horrible last game. He's on the road. No one's going to really want to play him at captain. Oops. Jimmy Butler, same thing. So I think those 3 are my favorite. And yeah, I mean, I would go for the most expensive because I think straying away from comfortability of these builds where you're already straining a lot of your salary when you're clicking these expensive guys is what the field does not want to do. So whatever the field doesn't want to do, I want to do. And that's how we kind of get different in these large field GPPs.
So Bruce Brown would be the other one that I would consider just because based off the first test build that we ran, we got no Bruce Brown. So we know he's naturally going to be not a popular captain option. Rubio, I like what Glock said. We want to be focused on the main guys, a captain. Is there anyone else you want to add in our captain pool, or should we keep it a tight for this script? Should we keep it a pretty tight captain pool?
Yeah, I kind of like the script that we have right now. Unless you wanted to throw in,
Kevin Love will be popular in the cap. Like I feel like that's going to be the chalky.
Gabe Vincent, you got a pretty stout projection on him. I think I got a stout projection too.
But it's like what Big T says on the cheap captain builds. Like sometimes the build's so obvious, like you just want to give yourself that build, right? Like even though if it ships for $400 or $500, like it feels better to get some of your money back rather than lose it all, at least in my opinion. So I do like keeping the Kevin Love builds in there, especially since you're higher on him.
I think I might pull Aaron Gordon in too and bump him up just a little bit. Now we don't like him and we've kind of been under on him, but I don't know if they go away from MPJ or if MPJ struggles again. Maybe they try to tee up Aaron Gordon. I mean, who knows? And he should be pretty low owned in that captain spot. I'll just round these out, make them nice and neat. Obviously, that will change over here too, our base projection. But I kind of like the script that we have going. Should we run it and see where we land? Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, one thing I will say, like how AP is doing it, I also like to do it in reverse, where you narrow it down after you run your builds, because sometimes there's obviously we're narrowing down our captains that we like first, but if you run your 150 builds, there may be a captain that's popping a lot that you don't expect, but you didn't X out initially in that first step, to where you could be like, okay, the math is math. And so maybe I should have more, it's just an example, but maybe I should have more KCP captain, or maybe I should have more Kyle Lowry captain, just because based on your projections, that's what's hitting. So that's why sometimes I like to X out my pool after I run my set of lineups, just so I know like exactly how much percentage I have of each and like can understand how much is popping and why, basically.
Yeah, really good comments there. Before we dive into these builds, so we do have a promo going on right now, Summer 33. It's going to get you 33% off your first payment over here. You can use the code again. So go sign up, test us out. If you want to test us out for a week or a month, it's going to work on every package that we have. And we have quite the show lineup for all of you today. After this show, we got the NBA rundown with our guys Tyler and Spread. Make sure you stay on, watch that. We got Swing for the Fences with DC, Holden, Mangone on that show. We got the Showdown show, premium only for our members with Big T and JSU later on today. So make sure you use that code, sign up, and run Pier. Let's organize these by highest projected. Again, why do I do that? Why don't I use anything else? Again, with NBA, we're making adjustments. I want to build off of the script that I think is going to pan out, and I want my builds to reflect the projection adjustments that we've made. Rubio, let me kick it back to you. So you like what we're seeing here? We're getting we have quite the pool. We have 8 captains in our pool. We got Kevin Love coming up there. We got a little Jokic. So based off of what the bias projections were, we're under on Jokic. We got Bam in there. Aaron Gordon pops up. That's interesting. And then finally, Bruce Brown is hitting some of those builds. I'm going to talk about what you're seeing here. I'm going to bring these Bruce Brown captain builds up.
Yeah, this is like what we mean by the Kevin Love funnel builds a little bit. Like, you see that when you plug Kevin Love at the captain, you're seeing a lot of good teams that make a lot of sense. And it's tough to get away from them. That's why I say it's fine in single entries and stuff where, people run all types of builds, leave a little bit of salary. Maybe you're thinking a little bit different. But a lot of those teams that have Kevin Love probably have Bruce Brown in there as well, or maybe even like MPJ. The biggest thing about like those Kevin Love teams that I was watching it, fill all my teams here, is that it paired a lot with MPJ, which I don't love. I don't like pairing Bruce Brown completely with MPJ. I don't mind like a sprinkle of that, but it kind of goes to the fact that they kind of take away from each other a little bit. But that being said, it can still hit. If Jamal had foul trouble, KCP or Gordon, I understand that, but it's definitely not something that I feel really, really comfortable with. Another thing too, you just notice it right off the rip, is like Bam's hitting all these teams, and that's going to be hard to get away from Bam tonight. So it kind of goes to what I said in game 2. Like, I'll play Bam in my main team, and then I'll kind of be underweight across the board, for my MME. And didn't exactly pan out one way or the other, but it could have a very similar case tonight where I'll be more aggressive with these 50 lineups, fade Bam a little bit more, give him a little bit of underweight protection, but still have him on my main team. So that way, if there's a chance that script plays out that way where Bam underwhelms, and you're not completely SOL if that's the case.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then for you, Glock, I'll kick it over to you. What I did, again, I love using these Minimax, and we don't have to rerun the build. It has our script, but now what we're doing is we're limiting these. So I just put your max exposure 5% for the Bam, Gordon, Bruce Brown, Kevin Love, Vincent, because you mentioned that you're really high on the top 3 dogs: Jokic, Butler, Jamal Murray. So now the builds kind of reflect that. What are you seeing here in the captain spot? Is there any builds that you want me to click on that we can browse through?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys saw it right there. Initially, when you ran your build and you only made the projection changes, right? You saw that the 2 bottom guys, Butler and Murray, they were at the very lowest exposure for your captain spot. And so obviously the changes you made were, to kind of go with what we said, where those 2 guys are going to be very low on captain. So like, you just go down this list here. Oh man, like, okay, that second build, it fades Jokic. I don't know if I would do that one, but it's interesting. Like, obviously that build only leaves $100.
Spazzing out too.
But I can guarantee you that is not duped that much, because there's not going to be many people that fade Jokic. And obviously you look at all those plays right there. You get Jamal Murray head of the snake, as Steve Kerr says, Kevin Love starting, Jimmy Butler at home, Bruce Brown, big game, leverages MPJ and Aaron Gordon, Bam Adebayo at home as well with Jimmy, and then Max Struss, good shooting game, cheap tag. I like that build. Obviously, it fades Jokic, but yeah.
Here's the argument, though, for that build and why it could make sense. I know I want to be 100% Jokic, but that thought process might be incorrect. If we go back to the regular season, now, again, it's the playoffs again. A lot of people, regular season doesn't matter, is what it is. But during the regular season, when Bruce Brown was on the court at the same time as Jokic, both guys can act as a facilitator. You could almost see, if we got more Bruce Brown, maybe he's the guy teeing up Jamal. And maybe that's what leads to less assists. Because if we go back to game one, Jokic still got there. Why did he get there? Because he wasn't aggressive offensively, but he got the peripheral stats. If you have another distributor on the court at the same time, in Bruce Brown, potentially, depending on how they want to use them, if MPJ's struggling, that could be a path. I'm not saying I like that path, but that could be a path to where Jokic underwhelms. What does underwhelm mean? 57, 56?
Oh, yeah.
But if he
that
puts up that,
awesome.
is he up? Yeah. That, exactly. So it's thin, but the script makes sense when you think about it, if it runs out like that. Rubio, back to you. What you have any final? We do got to bounce here soon, but you got any final thoughts on some of these builds?
No final thoughts, really. I think it's done really well. I really like that Jamal and Jimmy kind of combo at the captain spot. That could be something that you're looking at that gets really different. Like Locke said, no one's going to have those. It's great from a tournament perspective. You know, we've seen things happen, and we're trying to focus on a way to get different from the field a little bit for this, top prize. We got $1 million prize pool, $1.25 million. I want to take home that $250K top prize for sure. But yeah, it should be a really fun slate. I can't wait to kind of dig in. You see that Jimmy Butler line's 52nd in the rankings. So I'm going to be fiddling with that quite a bit, but I appreciate you having me on, AP and Glock.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, guys, before we go, though, hit the like button, hit the subscribe. Helps us out a lot. We appreciate all of you. We got to do our predictions. Game 3, Glock, let's start with you. Who do you got winning tonight?
Man, Miami keeps proving me wrong, but I'm just going to keep going at the well. Just going to keep going until I'm right. I'm going to say Denver bounces back, figures out how to get Jamal Murray more involved. But I think it's going to be a close game script. So I'm going to go, let's say 108 Denver, 103 Miami. So 108 Denver, 103 Miami. That'll be my guess.
Is it going to be bad if we're all on Denver again and then they lose?
It'll just be the status quo of the playoffs. Miami just keeps proving us wrong.
I know. Oh, it is crazy. It definitely is crazy. Rubio, what's your game prediction?
Denver 102, Miami 95.
102-95. I think it's going to be a close game again. I think we see Miami, like, I do think that they can take control early, and then I think the Nuggets come back and we see it. I think it's going to come down to the final few possessions, though. I'm going to go with the Nuggets. I'm going to go 107-105 is where I'm going to be. All right, everyone. We got to get out of here. Again, we got a full lineup of shows for all of you. Summer 33, 33% off your first payment over here at Run Pure Sports. For Rubio, for Glock, I'm AP. Let's run Pure.